students. Today we're going to talk about the map for individualized thinking, which is a guided reading thinking activity. So a little bit about me. My background is that I am a reading specialist. So I have my master's in reading. And for 1 full year, I worked in a reading clinic studying how the brain works while we are reading narrative texts. And during my time doing that research and that study, I developed a tool to help you understand a text on a deeper level. And this tool I call the map for individualized thinking. And it is to help you dissect a text on a deeper level, relate it to yourself, dig into it, and really understand it on a deeper level. So the map for individualized thinking is an analysis of a piece of literature that we'll be doing periodically while reading. And the great part about it is that it's different for everyone. No two students will ever have the same answers. So let's start with a very basic question, which is, what is the difference between looking at something and observing something? Think about that question for a moment. When you look at something, you are simply seeing it without processing what you're seeing deeply. To look at something, you don't have to actively engage in deep thinking. When you observe something, you are actively engaging your brain in a series of thought processes that help you take meaning away from what you're seeing. You're constructing a deep understanding. To observe something, you have to actively engage in deep thinking. So how does that relate here? The goal of the map for individualized thinking is to take you from simply reading quickly without really processing the information, or you're just looking at it, to train your brain to deeply observe the text or actively analyze and construct deep meaning. We want to engage the brain while we're reading and take ourselves from being passive readers to active readers, really digging into the text. Individualized thinking. In order to dive into a text and observe closely, you need to think and develop on your own. The MAP mission is to be excellent. Students need to practice how to think so they can achieve both understanding and independence. The development of the right to think is the development of the individual. If the teacher tells you what to think about the text, you are not truly engaged in extracting your own meanings. So the reason I developed this tool to analyze a text is to get you actively thinking about the characters, the development, the plot, what it means to you individually as a reader and as a person. And if I constantly tell you what to think about each chapter, then it takes away the action of you becoming an active reader. And it takes you to just kind of being passive, sitting there, listening, follow along, looking at it, but you're not really engaging your brain. So this MIT, which is short for Map for Individualized Thinking, will train your brain to go through 8 important steps while reading, which will help you dive deeply into text and construct your own meaning. They are the 8 steps that all good readers follow, and I developed these out with a lot of research about how we can activate different parts of our brain while reading. So we are going to engage in understanding, problem solving, making connections, asking questions, visualizing with sensory images, drawing inferences, determining importance, and synthesizing. So let's take a look at what all of that means. So each of these 8 steps will require you to write a thoughtful, personal response. Your response should be detailed, thorough, and well-written. You will always write in complete sentences and elaborate on how you yourself are processing the text. Reread your work before turning it in to catch grammatical errors. Here are the different processes we'll engage in. The first one is understanding. So for understanding, you're going to think about what is the theme of this group of chapters and why is it important. So for this process, you will think about the events in the chapters, and explain what you believe a theme and message for that group of chapters is. You'll need to justify your theme choice and explain why it is significant. So I gave you all a theme and message list that I created for you at the beginning of the school year, and we've been using that throughout the year. Feel free to consult that resource. Remember, a theme is the overall arching big idea of the text. The message is the specific thing that the author is trying to communicate to the reader. So here's an example of what that might look like. The theme of the first 2 chapters of Sun would be courage and fear. That's the theme. Now, the message. Courage is the resistance to fear, not the absence of fear. So once I've chosen a theme and message that I feel fits and is represented in the text, then I'm going to do an explanation. Why is this theme and message appropriate for this section of text? So for example, even though Claire is scared during the whole birthing process because she didn't know what was happening, she still had the courage to demand answers to questions she had. She also had the courage to break the dormitory rules and ask for information from the other girls. The theme is important because it helps show Claire's personality. She is strong, determined, and brave. So here I went through the first 2 chapters. I was looking at what a theme and message might be. There is no wrong answer as long as you can justify it. And then I thought about how I can relate that to specific events within the chapter chunk and tied it all together. So that's going to be your Q1, your question 1 on your map is, what is the theme of the group of chapters and why is it important? Next up, Q2 is going to be problem solving. So for problem solving, what is a conflict? How could it be solved? Now for this process, you will identify any problem in the chunk of chapters and present a plausible solution to the problem. So this is really helpful that you had the reading logs while reading, because one of the things you did during the reading log was you took a look at the conflict throughout the chapters. So go back through there and skim and find what you feel to be the most significant conflict from this chunk of chapters. And then you yourself are going to propose a logical solution. So how could this be solved? So I have an example of sentence starters here. A problem presented in the first 2 chapters was when blank. This problem could be solved by blank. So this is actively engaging your brain in the process of problem solving. So remember, we're trying to light up and activate all of the different sections of the brain while reading. And that's what's going to get us to process the text on a really deeper level. Next up, Q3, the next part of our MIT, we are making connections. So it says connect something from the chapters to a personal experience or prior background knowledge. So what you're going to do is you're going to think about something that occurs in the chapter chunks, and you're going to think about what you've experienced in your lifetime, and you're going to make a connection with the 2 of them. So here's an example. When reading chapter 1, I thought about a time when I went in a hospital to see my baby brother right after he was born. I was thinking about how different the setting in the book was from what I saw in my mother's birthing room. Her room was clean and all the nurses were kind and helpful. Claire's experience sounded horrible. No one would explain anything to her. I don't think any hospital around here could be that bad. And so here I'm showing that what I know, what I've experienced is different from what I saw in this chapter, and that's making connections. If you're ever stuck with making connections in the Q3, my suggestion is to make a connection to an emotion. So for another example, at one point, Claire feels completely confused and she feels like she wasn't given enough information to understand what was happening to her or what was expected of her. So you could even for Q3 say, in the first couple of chapters, Claire does not have enough information to understand what's happening to her. Here's a time in my life where I felt unprepared, or I felt like I didn't have enough information to actually understand what was happening and actually go into detail and explain what happened to you. So this is a really, really important part of reading, is making personal connections to the things that are happening in the text. And it helps you understand the text on a more personal level instead of just having someone tell you what to think and feel about it. So Q3 is probably my favorite out of all of the tasks for your MIT. Q4, asking questions. Create 3 ponderable questions you have about the text. So here we're talking about the difference between ponderable questions and direct questions. So ponderable questions can't be answered simply. Direct questions have one correct answer. So what we don't want to do when we're asking questions, we don't want to ask direct questions, because once you find the answer, that's it. There's nothing else to really think about. Ponderable questions are great because they can kick off discussions. They can be something that you can go back and forth with for hours with a friend, and they really get you thinking about the text on a deeper level. So, for example, a direct question, what we don't want, what was placed over Claire's face? That's not a deep question. It's not going to spark a discussion. It's not going to get us into really deep understanding of what's going on by discussing it. We want to avoid that. Here's an example of a ponderable question, what we do want to see. Why did the community members think preventing Claire from seeing her product would prevent her from having feelings for it? So this is something that we can really have multiple answers to. We can discuss it over a long period of time. And that's what we're looking for with the Q4 box in the MIT. Ponderable questions. Next up, Q5 is visualizing with sensory images. So for Q5, you're actually going to be drawing, illustrating a picture. So you are going to draw a specific meaningful image from the chapters of either a person, place, thing, or event, and you're going to explain what it is in 2 sentences underneath. So this gets you really digging back into the text to help you visualize what's happening. What I don't want to see is you drawing something really random that you think you could have remembered from the text. What I want you to do is go back into the text and look for a description that has a lot of sensory language and a lot of descriptive words, and then use that in order to inform your illustration. So I want to have something that accurately represents the exact way something appears within the text. So I'm looking for an example here. The next day, she walked alone to the dormitory attached to the birthing unit and moved into the small bedroom she was assigned. From its window, she could see the school she had attended and the recreation field beyond. In the distance, there was a glimpse of the river that bordered the community. So this here is a description of Claire's dormitory at the birthing unit. So that could be something that I illustrate with a lot of detail because it's described here. So I could draw the dormitory with a big window, and I could show that it was for one person with one bed. And then from the window, I can draw the school she had attended, the recreation field, and then beyond that, the river that borders the community. And that way, the image that I have, the drawing I have, is actually pulled directly from the text and represents what's actually here and just helps us visualize it. So I don't want you drawing a random building and being like, birthing unit. That's not what we're doing. We're pulling text and we're using that to inform our illustrations. Okay, next up we have Q6, drawing inferences. Make a prediction about what you think will happen next. Explain your reasoning behind your prediction. So this is really activating your brain with taking pieces of what you know and then mixing it with logical outcomes and coming up with something that you think may happen. So for this one, just be detailed in your predictions. Don't be vague. Be super specific. And then think of details from the text that hint at why you think that might happen, why that's a logical event that could transpire next. Q7. This one, we are pulling a quote from the text. Determining importance. What is the most important line in the group of chapters and why? So here we're practicing our MLA quote formatting. So you're going to have a lead-in, the author's words, and then at the end you'll have the citation, author's last name, page number in parentheses. So What I don't want is a random quote in here where you're just like turning the pages and picking something willy-nilly. What I do want is, if you go back to those reading logs, you already started pulling out significant important lines. So skim through some of those, identify a really good page number to go back and investigate. And then you want to pull a quote that is super significant. So for example, you're going to start with your lead in. That's your own words introducing the author's words. The most important line from this group of chapters is comma. Oops. Then you're going to go into the text and you're going to find the specific lines that you want. Remember, if you have quotation marks inside your quote, the inside quotation marks, they turn to apostrophes to show that there's dialogue happening. Also, remember, you can take things out that you don't necessarily want by using ellipses in order to jump around. So that's 3 dots. So, for example, I really like when the committee member messes up and gives Claire a piece of information that she wasn't supposed to know. So the woman returned the paper to the pile and tapped the edges of the stack to make it tidy. He's fine, she said. The committee had glared at her. She corrected herself. I meant that it's fine. The medical difficulties didn't affect it. So here, Claire learns that she had a son. So that's significant. So I could put that here in quotation marks. And then at the very end, I'm putting the author's last name, Lowry. Please make sure you're spelling the author's last name correctly. And then I put the page number. So I found this on page 16. So I would put that there. Not only are you pulling a quote that is important from your chapter chunk, but also you're explaining why it's significant. Why did you choose that as being super impactful? So here it's significant because I could put something like, this line is significant because it gives Claire information that she shouldn't have had. And now that she knows that she has a son, it strengthens that maternal connection that she has with the baby. And if she didn't know its gender, perhaps she wouldn't have formed such a quick bond with the child. And also it gives her information so that whenever she goes to look for her child later on, she knows who she's looking for. She's looking for a boy. So that would be an explanation of significance. So that is Q7. Q8 is extremely important. This is synthesizing. So what is synthesizing? Synthesizing is when we make connections between things. So you're going to explain how these chapters connect to previous chapters. Have questions of yours been answered? How so? Have your predictions been close to actual events? Explain. So synthesizing, making connections. You could make connections between what we've read in the first book, The Giver, or you can make connections between chapters. So we've kind of been doing a little bit of synthesizing in your insight section of your reading log, so you can use that as a helpful tool to consult. And the last one, Q9, this is the grammar review. So here you'll be given a task to complete to review your grammar lessons. For example, a grammar task may be find an example of a gerund from the text. So then you'll have to refresh your memory and say, yes, I know that a gerund is a word that was a verb. It's now functioning as a noun. No one's doing it. We're talking about it. Gerunds always end in ing. So then I'm going to go back to the text and I'm skimming for something that is a verb that ends in ing that no one's doing. We're just talking about it. It's functioning as a thing. And then I can put that there. So the Q9 will change and you'll be reviewing different types of grammar throughout the different MITs that you complete. So those are all of the boxes. Those are all of the tasks. And again, these are called metacognitive reading thinking strategies, and they are designed to light up 9 different sections of your brain to help you process the text on a deeper level and also make it more individual for you, where you are making personal connections and not really being told what to think about the text, but you're sparking your own exploration of what it means. So what does the MIT look like? This is the MIT. I designed it as a map. So you'll notice that this particular MIT I designed for sun. So as we read, the different symbols throughout the map will reveal themselves as to what they actually mean, which is kind of cool. So again, Q1, understanding, theme and message. You'll type up that here, problem solving, making connections, asking questions. This one, you're drawing in this box. This one, you are making inferences, so you're making a prediction. Here, you're pulling your quote, explaining why it's important, making connections, and then your grammar review. So this MIT we can use for any text at all, but this one I just designed with images for sun, since that's what we're doing now. So I'll give you a little example of what this will end up looking like. This is what a completed MIT will look like. This is a past student's work. So you'll see it's detailed, it's thorough, it's in complete sentences. This box, Q5, is the only one where you are drawing a picture. I know this says drawing inferences, but that means that you're making inferences. You're not actually illustrating something in that box. So just be clear about that. So this is what it will end up looking like when you're done. So this is a fantastic tool that you can use with any narrative text. So we're using it with Sun right now, but this could be something that you use in the future when you're going to the high school. If you want to just start doing these processes in your brain, it will really help you understand a text on a deeper level. So take your time with it, be thorough, be unique, be independent, and I can't wait to see what you think about the chunk of chapters you're analyzing with your very first MIT. Thanks for joining for the video. If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to email me and I will answer you immediately. All right, thanks for joining. See you later.